Welcome to It Simply Isn't Done. I'm Jess Davenport.
And I am Barry Petrucci.
And together we are...
The Irreverent Reverends.
We are podcasting to you from Portage Chapel Hill Church.
In the podcast room.
In our new podcast room where we are co-pastors. We are from the United Methodist tradition.
We are. And we're blah, 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 cut. We started doing this podcast called It Simply Isn't Done as a way for us to talk about our weekly sermons, but also to talk about occasional things that have to do with the intersection between church and culture, between faith and culture. We have a few things that we want to keep in mind as we do that.
So It Simply Isn't Done. We're thinking about that in terms of the church. The church is not done, even though in North America it's changing largely, and we're excited to see what that change will be and to talk about that.
It's not complete.
Yes.
Not done.
And it's
still
simply...
in the oven.
And it simply isn't done, meaning some of the stuff we do. That's more, you can imagine like an old lady wagging her finger at you, being like, that's just not done. Yeah. That's the kind of stuff we do, and we enjoy.
And we enjoy doing the things that are not done, and sometimes we catch ourselves going, why are we doing that? That's not done.
So we thought, It Simply Isn't Done as a way for us to have some of these conversations that we have and to broaden them with you all. So thanks for being here. So this is one of our topical episodes. We are recording this on November 22nd of 2022, which is 5 days before the season of Advent begins. And as we were considering and thinking about Advent, we just wanted to have a conversation about what that could look like and ways we could actively participate in it in our lives, not just through watching someone light a candle at church.
Yeah, I mean, the very concept of Advent in the churches is radically countercultural. Mm-hmm. And yet we find ourselves getting sucked into the culture of busyness this time of year for different reasons, but still the end result being the same, that we spend an awful lot of time preparing stuff rather than preparing ourselves.
Yes. So let's start with some basics. So, Barry, if you're going to explain Advent to someone, what's your Advent 101 spiel?
So my Advent 101 spiel, sorry, my head just went to our conversation yesterday on Yiddish. What I say about Advent is that, we so much of what goes on in the world is preparing ourselves for gifts and gift giving and meals and family gatherings, and those are all wonderfully good and fun things. Advent in the church is really a time between Christ the King Sunday, which we just did this last Sunday, and the wrap up, and the end of the telling of the story of the Christ. And Advent is a time for us to put ourselves in a position of waiting, as they did in times of old, when they were waiting for a Messiah. And that's very much not where we see ourselves very often, but it's a place where we imagine and reimagine that the Christ is not in our midst, and what is it we're waiting for. So it's a personal time of devotion to consider what is the emptiness within us that we're hoping to fill in some way with the coming of a Christ child.
Yeah, that's a good 101 spiel.
Spiel. Schlemiel Schlemazel.
Haas and Pfaff Incorporated. We're going to get a copyright flag.
That's right. They're going to take us off the air. Very wise.
And so something that I really appreciate and that I like about Advent is that it is a whole season, right? So interestingly, right now, as you were kind of mentioning, there's Christmas everywhere. Really, right at the end of Halloween, we see it everywhere culturally. But within our own tradition, we don't celebrate Christmas until Christmas Day when it actually happens. And we have these 12 days. You might have heard the 12 days of Christmas. And, traditionally that was kind of set aside as the feast time, this Christmas season of these 12 days until Epiphany. And slowly, I would say largely due to commercialism, but also, we love this season, right? There's something that people really love about this season, and I think we can harness and take some of that energy and repurpose it into the meaning of Advent, right? The waiting. I was just looking up because I didn't want to misquote it, so we know Advent, Adventus, from Latin, meaning coming. Something is coming, and we have this, we have these 4 Sundays, and then we have this birth, and we have that time to do this preparation. And our faith ancestors wisely put Christmas in the middle of the winter, right around the solstice, because there's a lot of traditions that are kind of similar. And I love the thought of the earth, getting darker and stilling itself. And we were just on Reign of Christ Sunday. We were just celebrating ministries going fallow, like the earth is going fallow. There's something kind of to that waiting and understanding it seasonally too, within our own patterns.
That's why you love In the Bleak Midwinter.
I do.
Yeah, this great old hymn, In the Bleak Midwinter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is that time where we're supposed to be slowing down. Of course, very much written in a time where folks were much more attuned with what was going on with the earth. They were living in agrarian society, very much in touch with when it was season to sow and when it was season to reap, and then the rest that comes for that brief period between the reaping and the sowing again.
Yeah.
So here we are in that brief time, and it's hard to give ourselves permission to slow down, take a beat, and do some reflection.
Yes, and we were talking about this and thinking about it as leaders in a church and in a faith community. We're not really exempt from this just because we are putting together Advent, right? Just putting together Advent in and of itself is not practicing Advent, and in fact, it can become quite counter. Because in church, we have more church services, we have more musicians, there's more logistics, and it's very easy for us to fall into the trap of doing the exact same thing Advent is trying to still us away from, but doing it in the name of this church season. And it's hard to think that through, and what could this look like? How can we do this in a way that honors the necessary work so that people can fully participate in this season, and honors those of us that are doing it such that we can participate in it as well.
Yeah, and I don't think that we have any magical answers.
Oh no, we're coming to you all.
And we're in the podcast room because we just came out of our time together as pastors and really doing some confession that this is a lot of work and it's a lot of doing. And what occurs to me is that the scriptures that we work with through Advent are largely not doing scriptures. They are scriptures about what God is doing and what God is gifting us with, what God is gifting the world with, and are we willing to take a step back to receive those gifts and appreciate those gifts, or are we just going to keep plowing ahead with the stuff that we think is so important to do? And that really, as they say, is the $64,000 question. Will we actually step back and give ourselves space to be and not just do?
One thing we can offer you, that we will offer to each other and to our staff, is the question that's the title of this episode, right? So Advent is the season of waiting. What are you waiting for? In these next 4 weeks, as you imagine them, right? Take a moment, close your eyes, imagine in these next 4 weeks, what are you waiting for? And if you think about that, is it a lot of getting through it and hustling and bustling until it's over because it's a ton of work, and it's great and wonderful and, but really it exhausts you on every single level? Are you waiting for, smiles on kids' faces? Are you waiting for quiet time alone? Are you waiting for meal or food or family? And think about that intentionally. what are you waiting for? And in this time, acknowledging your agency, what do you want to be waiting for? What do you want to be waiting for? How do we await Christ in a meaningful way, such that we don't have to entirely disconnect from from the world? That's not really what it's about, asceticism or anything. Like, oh, you've got to be. But what are you waiting for? What are we waiting for?
The Advent tradition gives us 4 concepts that are easy to think about as things, but they're really not things at all. They're concepts, they're ways of being within ourselves, with each other, with God. So this Sunday we'll be doing hope as a central theme, and then we go to peace and joy and love. And if we have nothing else in these 4 weeks, if we keep finding ourselves doing the stuff that we always do, it's not so bad to fall back on those concepts and ask ourselves, how am I being present in the midst of hope? How am I being present in the midst of peace and joy and love?
So we just offer that to you all in this season, such that you might take a breath before Advent even begins and consider what you're waiting for and how you can be attuned to the season of Advent, such that the birth of Christ and Christmas Day, surprises us with its delight.
Because all the world is waiting, and so are we.
We will check in with you again during this season. Until then, be well.
Be well.